If you're following the news, you've seen labor strikes in many different places and many different industries. For more on why now and where this movement may go from here, let's bring in Rick Smith.
Rick, I got to ask you, what's been your reaction to the UAW strike? This thing is kind of grown and mutated, and it keeps moving. And I think union might be winning right now. But what's your opinion, Rick? You've been watching closer.
Well, I've been to the picket lines. We're going to be going back again this weekend to Toledo and to Michigan to visit the people on the picket line. Because as we've been talking about on our program, I want this to be Adopt a Striker Month. In fact, every month should be Adopt a Striker Month. But get out there on the picket line, walk with a person on strike, talk to them, find out from them, not what's being spun in the corporate-controlled mainstream media, but what the workers are actually saying. And look, I'm thrilled to see working people come together. You framed it as I'm a big supporter of the unions. No, I'm a big supporter of workers. I'm a supporter of people coming together and saying, we earn a fair share of the wealth that our labor creates and demanding it like I've never seen in my lifetime. And so it's an exciting period of time. It's a scary time, but we could be rebuilding what our grandparents built, which is the most prosperous working class in the history of civilization.
And Rick Smith, we saw President Joe Biden standing on the picket line with labor. That's somewhat unprecedented for a U.S. president.
Well, it's never happened before, and it shows that Joe Biden is a guy who is on the side of working people. He not only talks the talk, but clearly walk the walk. And look, I slept on your Capitol floor back in 2011 during the uprising. And I remember Barack Obama saying as campaign Obama, when there's strikes and there's, people in the streets, I'm going to put on those comfortable shoes and I'm going to march with them. Well, Joe Biden must have found those comfortable shoes and he used them.
Obama never did. And Rick, we've upgraded to a couch here in the Solidarity Realty Studios, man. So we got a place for you. Folks, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. We got a friend of ours. He is Rick Smith. You hear him right here on the Civic Media Network, 8 to 10 p.m. Central Time. Rick, what about the solidarity of the UAW workers and what impact do you think this has had, this sort of rolling strike, very strategic, very targeted? Is that your impression of what's going on?
Yeah, I think what they're using what the airline workers used back in the 90s, which was the chaos strikes, and said, look, we're not going to tell you what we're doing. This is to disrupt your business. We don't want to do this. As I've said a million times on my show, a strike is the last arrow in the quiver. Nobody wants it. I've been on strike in my life. Other people I know have been, and nobody wins. But sometimes you're backed into a corner. Sometimes there's no other option but to go on strike to jumpstart the talks. And look how far they've come. If you remember at the beginning of this, hey, we don't have any more. We can't do any more, the big three said. And look, GM's conceded on making the battery plants part of the master agreement. They've upped the wages. There's talk of putting the COLA back by just about everyone. So they have moved, and I think there's more movement to come. Now, will the UAW get everything they want? No, but that's what negotiations are about. You say what you want, and you settle. What's happened too long in this country is, especially with labor and with Democrats, we talk about what we'll settle for as what we're talking about instead of moving that goalpost way out there and saying, hey, this is my wish list, but I'll settle for a little bit less. And I think that's what Sean Fain's done. I got to give this guy credit. He is talking the right talk and the frames that I've been talking about for years. It's not red hat, blue hat, it's hard hat. It's about getting to work, getting paid for the work that you do, and being valued. And when he talks about the working class, he talks about it in those frames, just like we did back in October, going through Wisconsin and Iowa and other cities on our Working Class Heroes tour.
Rick Smith, the big three, the automakers, they've also started firing UAW workers, or at least that's my understanding. Maybe they're non-union workers, but there has been, let's call it retribution for these strikes, or, claims of shutdowns have slowed down their process, whatever. It's a necessary evil. Does it make you worried for the workers that the automakers still have the power to fire?
Yeah. And they have the power to do a Jim Cramer on, what is it, CNBC or whatever he does. He said, just move everything to Mexico. They can do that. But this is what comes back to worker solidarity. Me, as a person who drives a Jeep, if Stellantis moves that Jeep plant to Mexico, you'll never see me drive another Jeep. This is where working people have to be like my grandparents' generation, like our grandparents' generation, where we stuck together. We understood that yeah, I may not be on strike today, but my interest and your interests align. And if you do better, we're both going to do better. I think we're starting to think that way, maybe just a little bit in the working class again. And that's a good thing. Now, walking the picket line and talking to these people, yeah, they understand there's possible consequences coming. But they also understand that with robotics and AI and the future of electric vehicles and everything that's on the horizon, they think that this is the moment to take the stand. While they still have significant power with the company and they still have the ability to kind of influence understand companies that made $250 billion in profit, massive stock buybacks, CEOs over the last 13 years have pocketed $1 billion. I mean, come on, there's money to be had. There's wealth there. The big three just don't want to share.
Folks, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Rick Smith from the Rick Smith Show. You can find him on Twitter at Rick Smith Show. Rick, great to see you again. Always appreciate you coming around, man. You kind of started into my question. As technology changes, artificial intelligence as it pertains to the SAG Actors Union, right? As electric vehicles as it pertains to making vehicles here in the state in this country, a lot less parts needed for EVs, and if you can use AI, that's a big thing. How much of this new what I perceive as new union robust support on action is driven by changes in technology versus changes in the current economic cycle?
I think it all comes together. I think we're at a perfect storm moment. I think you had all the organizing that happened, years ago with the Occupy Wall Street movement, the Home Defenders League during the collapse. You had this bottom up kind of organizing, the 99% frame, and then you had that building on, into the pandemic. People being told that they're essential, they're frontline heroes, and they internalized that. They went to work, put themselves in danger, and they look, I'm important. And look, now with inflation going up and the eggs being what they are, people are like, hey, we need to be able to put food on the table, keep a roof over our kids' head. So I think we're at a perfect storm moment. And in talking with the UAW workers, look, they're not Luddites. They understand that change is going to happen. They understand that it's inevitable that we're going to be moving in a certain direction. And I agree with them. Look, as a truck driver, I understand that at some point there's going to be automated trucks. The question is how do we navigate those waters? How do we ensure that it's safe? How do we ensure that the people who are going to be displaced are somewhat taken care of? Because look, as a truck driver, when we were riding horses, a lot of people lost their jobs. There's a transition. I want this to be the first transition where workers don't take it on the chin and the CEO class pockets all the gains. And we should be talking about that. And I think this is what the UAW strike is kind of bringing to the forefront, that there is going to be a just transition. And we're going to fight for it right now while we still have a little bit of power.
In the healthcare field as well, Kaiser Permanente, right? There's also strikes going on as well. Perhaps not driven, specifically by technology, but seemingly there seems to be momentum across many industries for people that are not only recognizing and appreciating their own worth, but demanding it from their employers.
Yeah, and also, what I loved about what came out of the Kaiser Permanente temporary agreement is the internal education that's coming out of it, the job training. We're probably about the same age. I may be a little bit older, but I remember at the end, I was at the end of where you could get a job in the mailroom and work your way up and be trained to do this job and that job, where employers were training workers to do the next level jobs. We've gotten completely away from that. Employers are going, no, you in the education system on the taxpayer's dime, you fund it. This agreement does have some language and some money going towards internal education and advancement, which I think is huge. Because look, at 85,000 people working for Kaiser Permanente across the country, they could easily start their own education system to educate their own members to keep them in-house.